All factories are equal, but some factories are more equal than others. At first glance, the Honeycomb switch from Keebfront looks like it shouldn't really be anything special. After all, it's a long pole linear with a polycarbonate top, a nylon PA66 bottom, and a 13.7mm long pole stem. The spring is listed as a 65-gram 2-stage spring. So all of that's really nothing we've not seen before. So with no fancy materials, what is it about this switch that makes it so special? Well, take a listen to these switches stock, right after you listen to the sound of that like button. There are two things that can't really be communicated well over a YouTube video, so I'll do my best to explain how these switches feel in my own words. First, these switches feel very snappy, probably due to the long 2-stage spring. They have a very quick actuation at what feels like the very top of the key press and a very heavy bottom out. In regular typing, the weight of these switches feels way heavier than the listed 65-gram actuation, although I've noticed that long 2-stage springs have a tendency to do that. On the screen right now, you're seeing my actuation force test, which stacks nickels and pennies until the key actuates. Nickels weigh just around 5 grams and pennies weigh roughly 2.5 grams, so it's useful to get a ballpark measurement of the actuation weight. You'll hear that dreaded via spacebar thump right at actuation, which happened in my 3 tests around 64.2 grams on the switch I tested after adding the weight of the SA keycap, which itself weighs 2.2 grams. A big part of the heaviness that's perceived with these switches is the bottom out weight, which I tested off camera at roughly 74 grams. The variance between the actuation and bottom out makes sense because the actuation is only about a millimeter into the key press, and even with the long pole spring, there's a lot of spring to compress to get to the bottom out. That also means that based on your typing style, these switches will feel a lot heavier than their listed 65-gram weight. Because if you're a heavy typist like I am, you'll be pressing the keys way past actuation. I actually tried typing with a very light feel, and it makes these switches feel like a completely different switch. Take a listen to these switches in today's build, which is the aella by Alchemist Keyboards. It's a burger-mounted 75% with an aluminum plate. Keycaps are Infinity Cafe. I went ahead and recorded 2 quick typing tests, one with my normal typing and one with just barely actuating the switches, just so you could get a feel for how they sound differently. It's pretty interesting to see how big of a difference your typing force can change the sound of these switches, and they really remind me a lot of the Ai03, which was the first switch that I can remember to have what's now considered a progressive spring that got heavier as you approached bottom out. That being said, it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. As it stands, these switches are the best example of a perfect stock switch that I've ever tried. The wobble is almost non-existent, the housings are so tight that films aren't recommended, and they come hand-lubed from Maroon with DuPont 205, which is essentially Krytox 205G0 as we've covered in past videos. And I think that's where these switches really shine. It's one thing to have a good factory lube job, which is typically a light oil that reduces the crap sounds in a switch. But it's another thing altogether to have a manufacturer lube switches by hand in what essentially makes a factory modded switch for peak performance right out of the box. And that's not just my experience, as the reviews of these switches all pretty much say the same thing. As for the bad or the ugly, I'd like to see a slightly lighter or possibly a single stage spring. Now don't get me wrong, the actuation at the top of the key press means the listed 65-gram actuation force is pretty accurate, but I'm pretty sure only professional pianists type with a light touch like that, and the rest of us are hammering away at our keyboards like the cavemen we are. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure that adding a shorter or lighter spring would alter the sound signature, which is one of the things I enjoyed most about the Switch. The other thing to note is these switches have been going out of stock faster than Keebfront can stock them, so make sure you join the waiting list. One other thing that I can't talk about right now is the price. They're listed on the website at $10.80, but it doesn't tell you how many come in a pack. From what I remember in my conversations with Keebfront, they should be somewhere around the 60 cent per Switch range, which is good, although I would like to see them be just a little bit less expensive. I think if these switches were in like the 50 or 55 cent range, there wouldn't be a need to look at any other long pull linears, but even then I think 60 cents a Switch is more than fair. The bottom line is, these switches are the epitome of what a Switch should be. A great stock experience and a great sound signature that you can open up and use right away. If that sounds like what you're looking for, make sure you check them out. Check out some more keyboard content here. I'm MakerMods, and I'll catch you in the next video.